What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Jack Ramsay's Dan and Marang, Brandon Sprague on a Sunday matinee mailbag edition here on Father's Day Sunday. Shout out to all the fathers out there. It is going to be a pretty packed show. You guys got in probably about 40 questions. I've got it narrowed down to some we got here in the rundown, and we'll deviate as we go. I just want to again say thank you all for getting so many questions in. I know as we get closer to the draft, there's a lot of the same general types of questions.
Yeah.
But we'll kind of hit on as many as we can, and we'll kind of work our way from there. Brandon, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Just enjoying a nice Sunday afternoon. I've had a great Father's Day so far.
You were a father, so happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you. I'm a father twice over, and maybe more, but I don't know those kids. And it's been a nice little Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, we've over here at the Marang household, we've already gotten one half of the family done. We're doing the other one here a little bit later, a little barbecue action.
You go both.
Oh yeah, we did my side of the family. We went out to brunch with my side of the family, and then her family is coming over here, and we're cooking dinner here. So
that's maybe that's a slight cultural difference too, because what I would say is I wish my father-in-law a happy Father's Day. He's a great dad, but they don't really observe.
Not their thing.
It's not really their thing. It's like, hey, happy Father's Day, love you, thank you. It's like, okay. Thank you, you're welcome. There you go.
Peace be with you, see you later, bye.
Yeah, basically.
Listen, man, I have had something to do on Saturday, Sunday, every weekend for the last 3 weeks, and I looked at the weather, and it's supposed to be like 78 to 81 next weekend. So we're driving back from lunch with my wife. I looked at it, I go, there will be no plans next weekend. The sun is out.
I'll believe that when I see the sun, actually, you know?
Well, yeah. Okay, that's you say I'll believe that when you don't make plans.
Well, sometimes those plans are probably out of your control, I'd imagine, right?
No, they've all been, well, I mean, yes. There was birthdays and, bridal showers and
right.
all that stuff. But we've got so much coming up that, we're running to Harry Potter World in August. Like, we're doing all kinds of stuff. So, I say all this, we have a packed show, so let's kind of get into it because, like I said, we got a ton of questions.
Yeah,
all,
great questions, by the way.
Yes, and thank you all for being here, whether you're watching live, you're watching on the replay, or you're listening on the podcast. Like, review, subscribe, help us grow the show. One of the first questions I wanted to get into, because I know you hate doing this, but I also thought it was a good primer as far as like where we'll get from this. And shout out to Michael Bodmer. I want to say fan of the show, supporter of the show. All around good dude. He hit us with a bold predictions for the next 5 days, and he didn't put Blazers predictions. Yeah, he just bold predictions for the next 5 days. And I'm gonna go with mine that I don't know if it's bold anymore because the winds seem to have shifted slowly this way over the last couple of weeks. But I turned my sail directly into this wind probably 2 months ago. Was that I thought Chet was going to go number one. I think that's the one that I'm going to land on here. Is I still believe Chet is going to go number one. I don't think that Orlando can really go wrong with either Chet or Jabari. I still have those guys at the top two as far as for what they look for, as far as looking at their GM and kind of what his history has been, which is to bet on length and athleticism.
Right.
This is the guy who drafted Giannis, who drafted Thonmaker, Mo Bamba, Jonathan Isaac. Like, he has a type.
He likes freaks. He likes freaks and unusual characters to see how good they can be.
Yes, and Chet is the freakiest of them. I will say the other bold prediction I have here is that you will see at least 3 starting NBA centers traded on draft night. Oh, actually, I shouldn't say draft night because you can't do one of them on draft night. In the week after that week leading up. So you may hear one announced on that.
Can you give us the 3? I'm blanking after Ayton in my mind.
I would say Ayton, Gobert, and Clint Capella.
Okay, I was wondering if you were going to throw Miles in there.
I think he's the dark horse, but I think for that to happen, one of those guys is going to end up in Indiana. Or
I think
Indiana gets
Ayton,
draft capital and gets...
Yeah, Ayton Turner could completely flip.
Yeah. So it's interesting to kind of see how that goes. When you look at this right now, and it doesn't have to be necessarily draft. Like, what's a bold prediction you have going into the NBA draft or over the next 5 days?
Well, I think I'll hit on with what you started with. The record's pretty clear to me. After the combine, I was the way they were talking about Jabari going 1, I thought that was a done deal.
Mm-hmm.
You and I did the show together, and we talked to Ken Barkley of You Better You Bet.
Yep.
And he says he's hearing all kinds of noise about Chet going number 1. And I think if Chet goes 1, that's when the bold predictions start, because that's when I think chaos could potentially unravel in the draft. I'm not,
because OKC's looking probably to move back at that point.
They're either looking to move back, or I wouldn't
Jaden.
be shocked, or they went Jaden Ivey.
And then it's just chaos.
Wow, what goes on after that? I think
Sacramento has the opportunity to take either Banchero or Jabari, and that 4th pick, all of a sudden, the value skyrockets.
Well, I think Houston's an interesting one, because if OKC were to go Jaden Ivey, which if we're doing bold predictions, there you go. I wouldn't be shocked if Houston took a couple draft picks to slide back, maybe not as convinced of taking Jabari or Paolo, and they like somebody else with what they're doing. Sacramento, I definitely think, is going to trade out of that 4 slot. That's been loud. That's been abundantly clear. And I like your center prediction, but I'll say a team 8 to 12 back is going to do a massive trade up once the draft completely flips.
We had somebody in the comments on YouTube over this last couple of days. I usually try to keep up with the comments in there as they come in over the week or the following days after a show. And somebody said it doesn't matter if it's not a consensus draft. It absolutely does.
Well, what do you mean by that, though?
Because if it's not a consensus draft and all of a sudden guys start going in different spots, you have different teams with different boards with where they value guys. There's not a 1, 2, there's not a 1, 2, 3, 4 like, yeah, this is chalk. Everybody knows how this is going to go. And the fact that OKC has multiple picks in the lottery, you got San Antonio in there. Those are 2 teams that never go with consensus and where they value guys. And so that can change things up. A perfect example, again, we brought this up a bunch, is Cam Johnson expected to go 21 to 25 in 2018. Well, that didn't happen. He went in the lottery, and all of a sudden NBA teams went, huh?
Right.
I mean, Kobe White. Wow. He went full Owen Wilson on us.
Was he 7? Was he number 7?
No, Cam went 11. Kobe went.
No, Kobe.
Kobe went 7, I believe. Yeah, the Bulls. Because you had a bunch of Tar Heels, and the third Tar Heel on that team, Nasir Little, is the one who fell down.
The Kobe one still, Kobe was a fine college player. I did not understand taking him in the top 10. I never viewed him and was like, yep, that's a definite franchise starting piece right there. And I think you got to aim for that. Doesn't know if you're going to get it, but I think you got to aim for that if you have a 7th overall pick.
I think the point there was that he has legitimate size, 6'4", with real athleticism. I'm a Kobe White truther, so I'm still holding out hope for him. If nothing else, I just like him.
I think he could just be. I think he could end up being like a really quality backup role guy for a good team at some point.
But you're aiming higher with number 7, which again, if you're looking at the Portland Trailblazers, for everybody who's out there, what I found really interesting, speaking of bold predictions, is I have not heard outside of maybe like Rafael Barlow, who we had on. There hasn't been a lot of there's real bust potential with this guy. Everybody's great. And we get a lot of this in draft because your access is denied if you're not gassing guys up, and whether people want to admit they're not. Well, you can say, well, why can't they be more honest? Well, then they don't get the access. Then they don't get, invited to interviews. They don't get invited to workouts. They don't get to talk to the coaches in the players' circles. And that's kind of the weird situation for where that's at.
Yeah.
But one thing I haven't heard a lot this year is who's going to bust. And as weird as this may sound, my bold prediction, and it's a guy that I like, and again, I think he kind of is like Kobe White, where I ignored some of the things that I shouldn't have ignored, is Ben Mathurin.
You think Ben Mathurin's going to be a bust?
I don't think he's going to be a bust. I think he has bigger bust potential than people are willing to admit. Because I've heard a lot of people call him a safe pick, and I think a lot of it has to do with how he came out of the NCAA tournament, the closing runs he had in the
I think it was TCU. I think it was TCU.
Yeah, where he just
went absolutely insane in the
over
end.
like a 5-minute period, but we disregard the other 28 minutes he was on the floor where he was awful, and he actually had a lot of those games this year where he had these bursts of just potential. Some people could see the other side of the coin and go, I could see him being the burst guy as opposed to the bust guy.
Right.
But I wonder, and again, we had Rafael Barlow on. He talked about, I asked around after having him on, his half court numbers. And that makes me a little bit more hesitant. Shaedon's obviously the guy who I think is got the biggest swing, but I think the guy that most people are most comfortable on is Ben Mathurin. He's because people are so comfortable on him. I'm like, should they be?
Yeah.
Is there a guy in there for you that you kind of have that feeling?
Well, I mean, if we're trying to go like the pendulum swinging from one drastic to the other, mine's Chet.
Okay.
I mean, and I think Chet's going to be a fine NBA player. I'm not buying in on the superstar hype. I'm not buying in that he's going to be this number 2 franchise guy. I think he could be a really good piece for a team, but I could also see the pendulum going completely the other way. Like if he goes and he becomes a superstar, then cool. This take's not going to age that well. If you told me the dude can't stay healthy every year and he kind of gets bodied and his body type is even more unusual than even a Kevin Durant's, and that matters, I wouldn't be surprised. I do think he is going to be one of, if not the player of this draft, that comes into the league with the biggest target on his back. I think naturally you get this kid, he's out of Gonzaga, he's 7'2", his wingspan's like 7'5", whatever it is. He's insane, he's incredible paint defender. I think guys are going to want to go at him. And I think you see this from time to time. There's just a player in a draft that some guys really want to go against. And so I'm not sold that Chet is like his floor is really good player and his ceiling is superstar. I don't buy that. I'm not saying that's like a consensus opinion, but I view him sometimes when I watch highlights and read things about him. And he's a smart kid, really good defensively, but I could also see the other side of that where it just does not put itself together, and the body type actually does play a factor in that. I think he's skinnier than KD. And so like,
he is. He's like 15 pounds skinnier than KD is.
And we comp him to KD because we're looking for a similar structure build, and we haven't really seen much of this. The only difference is KD he was so gifted offensively that it's hard to put into. It's hard to put an opinion on it, but I kind of view him as that guy for this draft.
The thing that I push back on is I think his floor is a lot higher than people are willing to give him. Remember the idea of Zach Collins? Shot blocking, floor spacing, help defender.
Yeah.
This is that. That's what when I look at Chet, and I'm sorry, I'm going to rub my nose a million times, guys. I've got allergies that are killing me.
Should have popped a Zyrtec.
No, yeah, I almost died last time. But I think he's actually that guy. For all the questions that, again, I hate doing this to Zach because it's not really fair because it's not his fault the evaluation was off. With Chet, he delivered on the things that were theory with Zach. Like the way that I evaluate young players is this. Particularly when you're talking about a player that isn't Zion, that isn't Ja, where you're just like, no, that guy's like, he's starting. Day one, he's starting. He's that guy. Chet may start from be that guy, but what is the thing that they do that gets them on the floor? What do they do at an NBA level? And I look at Chet, and I know that he can hit a pull-up 3 in transition, and I know he can block shots, and I know he can play against mismatches and be a great help defender. Those are the things I know he can do. And I think those alone allow him to keep his floor significantly higher. But if you're saying pendulum for how wildly good he could be versus a very
where it goes the other way,
a very good floor, then yeah, I think I can get there with you. I think so.
I think, Danny, for me, like I love the Ben Mathurin take. Raphael's point on the half-court offensive numbers, that was something that I paid a lot of attention to because we don't know exactly what Portland will or will not be doing. We think we know, but we don't. So I like that. Shaedon Sharpe, I think, is another good one. The only difficulty I have with those guys is I don't think those guys, by almost anybody, is viewed as the same high watermark as Chet. And so I'm going with the highest water. Like Jabari could be this, right? Like Chet, Jabari, Paolo, Jaden. I kind of put all of them in that upper tier of this draft. And I kind of put Keegan Murray, Ben Mathurin, Tari Eason. There's like a next level tier where, they could absolutely bust. But I kind of go more towards the top end tier dudes. And, we'll see. I'm really curious, and I can't wait to see Chet. I'll be rooting for Chet to do good. But of anybody from boom to bust, I kind of view him the most.
And maybe Mathurin sounds weird to some folks because he doesn't necessarily strike people as like this guy, but I've heard people say he's a great 3-and-D. Also, I could see him being like a high-end scorer, and I'm like, I like Ben Mathurin. I really do, but the more I dug into it, the more I was like, is he just, kind of like a Ben McLemore type player?
I was literally going to say his floor is Ben McLemore to me.
And that's not a bad player, but it's kind of funny because you look at where Ben was drafted, and it's like, there's always those players in that 5, 6, 7, 8 range where you're like, you get some good ones, Damian Lillard. You get some bad ones, Thomas Robinson.
Yeah.
You just never know in this range. Speaking of this range, this is a really interesting question that I liked. This was from Andrew John at AJ_VD. If you could be a fly on the wall in the draft war room for 2 drafts from Blazers past, which 2 would you pick?
Well, I'd love to go back to 2017. I will forever want to go back to 2017 because I actually want to hear the conversations that were had about the back end talent after Zach, the Bams, the OGs, the John Collins, and we've never really been given a description outside of some BS answer. And the second is pretty easy. It's 1978. I think it's the most overlooked Blazers draft that they ever had. We talk a lot about Bowie, Jordan, KD, Oden. Man, a lot of those were consensus picks and ideas because of the way the league was structured and people were playing. But if you go back to 78, I mean, they had the number 1 pick. They chose Michael Thompson. Larry Bird went 6 picks later. Mm-hmm. They had another pick in that draft. They got, I believe, in a trade from either Chicago or Seattle, and they went Ron Brewer, and Reggie Theus was picked 2 later. So, I mean, you could have walked away with that draft with a Reggie Theus and a Larry Bird. Maybe the organization's in a slightly different spot. So I think it's the most underrated draft for the team for sure, and those would probably be the 2 that I would probably pick if I could be a fly on the wall, especially with the Thompson. Thompson was a fine player, but I really love to hear the explanation for why Portland ended up going him over Larry, because you're seemingly drafting similar positions.
I like those. Those are 2 good ones. I went more recent, and my reasoning isn't about the level of player, but about the evaluation process and how they went about doing things. Number 1 is 2007.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 2006, the Brandon Roy draft.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at the string of transactions that they did on that night, Kevin Pritchard didn't put his phone down. Mm-hmm. The stuff that they did was absolutely bonkers to get Brandon, to get LaMarcus, and everything else that they did in that draft. I think they ended up moving 12 players on draft night around through various trades to get ultimately what they wanted. Yeah. It was bonkers. And I would have loved to have been in that room while Paul is okay, yeah, let's do this. Because that's the busiest draft night in this franchise's history, and it's not close. Like everything, they got 2 top 10 picks.
Yeah, they moved a lot of things around in the top 10 to get LA and Roy.
I mean, that is nuts when you think about it. And they got the number 2 pick in LaMarcus Aldridge, who was not considered necessarily the prize after the next year, which is crazy to think about. And the other one for me is 2017.
Yeah.
To understand the process behind that, what went into that evaluation, and where did it all fall apart?
There is, Danny, there's always, I mean, that will forever in my life, that will be easily in the top 3 of drafts of what happened here. Could you please walk me, could you give me the notes? I'd love to read just the notes, because there is a part of me, despite what anybody, whether they covered the team or not, would tell me that there is a legitimate part. I'm put tinfoil hat on here. I'll pretend I have it on because I lost it when I moved. There is a part of me, Danny, that truly wholeheartedly believes he did not do his due diligence. He did not do his research, and he was sold on taking Zach Collins and thought he just, for whatever reason, thought that dude has the upside of all upsides. And that's the guy.
We heard from Bam, from Rafael Barlow. He said that he thought they took Zach over him because Zach was a sexier pick and he could shoot, which is hilarious because Zach attempted 12 threes at Gonzaga.
He's not a shooter. And so I will forever love, and I'd love to hear Neil with anybody.
On True Serum?
On True Serum, really walk us through that, because if you told me, I quit scouting, I'm taking Zach no matter what, I wouldn't be floored by that admission.
Or there was a level of I know better.
I mean, he had a lot of hubris. There's no doubt.
But that was one question that I really liked as far as some revisionist history, certainly, but just kind of where that all went. The other one, I should say that one. Another question here, we kind of touched on this on Thursday, but I kind of want to circle back to this because it's a more pointed question. This is from Jeff Burchett at JD Burchett. Best offseason, OG and Grant, OG and Collins, Grant Collins, or just Ayton. After you choose, how did it happen? Picks, exceptions, all that. There's more options that I think that are out there, but if you're looking at a best possible outcome, it's getting two of those guys, however you shape it. But what is a good, well-done offseason from what we have heard that is out there? Is it Lou Dort and OG Anunoby? Is it John Collins and Lou Dort? Like, what does that look like in your mind as far as what's a good, better, best scenario for you?
Best is OG and John.
Mm-hmm.
With 16 returning. Best, better. What is it? What would you say? Best.
Good, better, best.
Good, better, best. Better would be getting probably OG and swinging in surprisingly some veteran player that could help them substantially that maybe we're not talking about.
The Rudy Gay of positions where you're
something like that.
It's a known quantity. We're like, oh yeah, no, that's a good move. I like that.
Think Nick Batum 2.0, maybe Nick Batum again, something,
Perfect.
And then, good to me is, I don't know, because I feel conflicted on that answer. I feel like it's good, seems like a knockdown here, and I've made it abundantly clear. I don't think it's the worst possible outcome if you end up drafting 7th. I know that's not something they want to do, but I value young assets, and in a league that's ever expanding with talent everywhere and guys popping up on all of these teams, all these role dudes, these late first, these second round picks, like they're all over this league right now. I think there could be a really good player had at number 7. Obviously, pie in the sky, too, I still think is a good pick, and I'll kind of wedge it in here. John in 16. I continue to think John Collins, he's 24 years old. He'd cost you a couple bucks.
See, I'd put that in a better category.
Well, sure, but I'm wedging. I'm giving you because
sure.
And I really would love to have 16 back, too, because I think that's an asset. Again, you could go get one of these hyper-athletic dudes who maybe they're not the most skilled offensive player, but this team's going to need some defense, and I don't want to see a guy played completely off the floor, but it's something we know that they're going to covet. Athletic, mobile wings, forward, wing types who can guard alternate positions. But if they end up with just 7 and then trying to figure it out, Dame's healthy, Ant's coming back. It sounds like you're going to sign Yusuf Nurkic. Like, this team is a playoff team, and then you get to add a young piece. So it might be the worst case scenario for everybody else. I don't think it's the worst possible thing is that they end up drafting their pick at number 7.
I would call them just getting number 7 and drafting. I'd call that a failure.
But we don't know. See, this is where I would stop short of that. I don't know what other moves they would make. Could they dangle a carrot?
They have to use the TPE.
Sure.
Like, they have to bring some, like,
100%.
They need to bring in some. If they just use the pick, I would call it a failure. But
I'm more looking at just draft day.
No, I am too, but I think they need to do it on draft day. Like, it's not impossible to do it later, but most of the business, I think, is going to be conducted on draft night. It's almost like you read the rundown here and you know where I'm going next year. My good, better, best. Good, I think, is honestly trading for any of those guys. Any single one of those guys is a good. Better is any combination of a top 15, 16 pick and one of those guys. Best, you're landing 2 of those guys.
Sure.
And that's kind of how I've structured this in my head. And other names could go into those positions. If somebody popped on draft night, a team sees something, a guy falls down to 7, they figure something else out around that particular pick. But it's kind of funny. Again, the next question I had here was from Alexander Nagels at Alex Nagels. How okay would you be with them keeping and using the 7th pick?
I've just made it abundantly clear. I know that's not number one on the power ranking scale of one Joe Cronin. I know he clearly wants to move that pick, and everything is kind of telling us that they will. But if they end up using it, again, man, like I'm just not going to sit in this outrage hot take culture where, you know, if they draft a player at 7, oh, it's a complete failure, because in 2 years, half of those opinions could be absolutely stupid. And we look back and go, that player was pretty good. I also am not completely dismissing the idea that Chet going 1 shakes the living hell out of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they have an opportunity to move up 4 and Paolo and Jabari fall. Are we still walking away going, well, they had to use their draft pick? I don't know if we are. I think if we had Paolo or Jabari, we'd be ecstatic with that. So I'm not going to completely destroy them if they use the 7th pick. We wanted them to tank for a good pick. It didn't quite go as high as we wanted, but they ended up doing what they needed to do, ripping the Band-Aid and taking some of the hair off with it. It hurts. It doesn't look great because there's still a patch now with no hair. But I mean, having a young asset in a piece is something to build with, is something to hopefully develop with. And as long as Dame is committed, then, you know, you get a 2-3 window here.
That's where I was going to go next. If you end up foregoing your assets to move up to number 4,
yeah,
I think there's a very strong chance that the Damian Lillard time is accelerated drastically.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this, man. And I say this with absolute love of that dude. Give him a statue, give him ownership stake, retire the jersey the day after he retires. Like, do it all, right? Give him the key to the goddamn city if he doesn't have it already. If that's the case, if that's what we're dealing with, just what you're holding the team hostage in a way.
Stars do that.
I mean,
stars do that, and I don't.
Sure.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be.
It's not always a bad thing, but I think it drastically changes how you operate.
It does. It absolutely does, and that's where we're at right now. And that's the thing is, everybody's like, well, what do we do this in best possible scenario? And it's like, I am looking at everything through the lens of what I have heard and what we have been told and what's going on behind the scenes.
Sure.
And every bit of that, and you know this, is about competing much sooner than, even if Banchero or Smith is available there for him, they move up. The likelihood of them being an Evan Mobley, which is a stupidly good rookie, doesn't get them to where they need to be even in 2 years probably. And I think that's what changes everything.
The only problem and pushback I have to that is I don't like that comp. Let's say they're below what you're saying, Evan Mobley, which I believe, because Evan Mobley was godlike, right?
Yes.
But if you're below that, you're still a pretty good player. Would you agree?
Yeah, again, I'm not disagreeing with that part of it.
Would you agree? Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. What would Evan Mobley or a slightly less version of Evan Mobley be with Damian Lillard instead of Darius Garland, unproven young player in the playoffs? They didn't win anything this year. They got to the playoffs and it was a great story, and I think they're set up for the future. But I think of an Evan Mobley-esque type, and I know I'm just using that and the skill level might not be there. That's a good team. Like, what are we looking for here? Is the bar for the franchise player the second round or better? Because I wouldn't tell him to hold his breath.
I think it is.
Okay, well, I don't know if this team is going to be able to pull that off.
Again, that's why threading that needle, and that's why it's so important that if they want that they go towards landing a guy like an OG or something along those lines.
Which I think is clear, Danny, that what they're
trying to do. And exactly, and it's not necessarily like, what do I think or what do I want them to do or what would be the best possible scenario, again, of spreadsheet basketball. It's more 100%. Of, this is what I think they're going to do based on what has been out there, what I've heard. And again, when you look at Cleveland, they don't have anybody. Their entire core is young. And that's what makes this. You don't see these situations. Let's look at Golden State, perfect example. They have 2 years where they're awful. You get Moody, you get Kuminga, guys who are super young, and when you look at where they are, they aren't ready. And I think they're both going to be solid players. I think Kuminga has a chance to be incredibly special.
Sure.
But even their best possible version is beyond the Steph, Clay, Dre timeline. And whether or not that's a good thing for Portland on the next cycle and what that means kind of going forward is this really like ubiquitous, stupid spot to be.
I mean, it is a stupid spot to be. I think it's the result of bad management for 3 years, 4 years. But I also like the problem with Golden State, you could be right. Kuminga, hell, Wiseman coming back healthy. Maybe Wiseman ends up being a dude. We don't.
He was a number 2 pick for a reason. Like
they took him over LaMelo Ball, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, LaMelo with that offense. Sure, but like the point is, it's nice to know that your young players can take 3 years or 4 years to develop because you still have Stephen Mother effing Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. They don't have that. So yes, Dame's healthy. Ant had a good 28-game stretch. Nurkic has the capability of being a productive, good center. Those are not those three. So I just don't know, man. Maybe I'm the idiot here and Dame knows what he's thinking, but it takes two to tango. We know Joe is shopping the pick. We know Joe is trying to make that trade. And if nobody bites, I don't know how you don't take that into account, I guess, from Dame's side going into the draft. And if you are, and you're not happy with that, then, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I think it kind of juxtaposes all of these different things. This is not a scenario where you're the Houston Rockets or the Oklahoma City Thunder, where the vision, the path is very clear for what you're trying to do. Getting the most talented players regardless of timeline.
Right.
The Blazers are trying to get the most talented players on a very specific timeline, making a certain amount of money. Like, if you're trying to, this is like trying to thread a needle that's still, or like 3 needles that are all moving at different speeds up and down, and trying to get it all in one pass. And I think that's what makes this so difficult, is that you might get 1, you might get 2. The likelihood that you get all 3 is very, very difficult. And it just makes it harder to evaluate what they can or can't do and how successful they can really be.
Yeah, and I think the thing about that for me too is this goes back to, good, better, best scenario. OG is probably the player I'd imagine you'd want because he's a 6'7" dynamic wing. He's 24. But if that is an instant, hey, we're not actually going to shop him, and that's not the best package. We want a Rudy Gobert type. Okay, and then you move on. Collins in 16 to me is easily number 2 because you still get to use a draft pick. You can still go get a young asset and say, hey, go be a bench guy.
And you have a starting caliber, no questions asked player.
Absolutely. And if worst case scenario happens, this rookie dominates in camp,
you just find a way to get him on the floor?
Maybe he starts. I mean, I don't know. What if he's a 3? And then you get Nurk, Collins, rookie, God hold your breath and cross your fingers, Ant and Dame. Like, there could be worse ways to build a starting 5 than that.
Especially if you did, let's say you did that, you didn't do any other additional big moves. So you keep Hart, you keep Little, Watford. Your second round pick, maybe you get a rotation Pat Connaughton-esque player down the line. You're like, you can put him on the floor. And you're like, let's just say Trent Watford, who got thrown to the Wolves basically because of all the injuries. And you're like, oh, no, it's a viable NBA player. And then they use their MLE and they add a guy to their roster, another big. Is that you've basically traded CJ, Norm, Cove, Nance for Collins, rookie, insert MLE player here. Your books look better, and Hart. I mean,
4 years ago, that's an awful, scenario and outcome. I'd say today I'm not really that upset by it.
It's
like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm just not one of these people that's like, well, they had 1 million offers for CJ McCollum's contract. I'm not going to be one to buy into all that stuff. Like, I know we love CJ. He'll get his jersey retired and all that. He'll get his flowers. But, it was a tough spot and it was long delayed. And ultimately, when that happens, you lose leverage. And people knew in this league that they were ultimately going to have to break that up, especially once Neil left. And CJ admitted this out loud. It's like, yeah, when Neil got fired, I knew it was over because he knew.
Was his shield.
Yeah, he knew he was Neil's dude.
Yeah.
And so the league knew that too. It was easy to read. You and I, we know people attached to the team. We talk to other people. I don't cover the team on a day-to-day basis. I knew that. Like, that was the obvious thing. You don't think a general manager of the NBA knew that? So
I mean, Griff put it out in the story after the deal was done, is that as soon as Neil was fired, he called.
Yes.
Because he knew.
Everybody knew. And so, again, not the best outcome you'd want with a player of that caliber, but again, a move 3 or 4 years too late, and you have to pay a bit of the consequence for that.
Considering where they're at now, I would call that return Hart, Collins, 16 pick, and your book's making a hell of a lot more sense.
Yeah.
A pretty decent return for CJ, Norm, Cove, Nance.
Yes.
Best return? No. Decent
No.
return? Yes. Considering the corner that Neil backed them into, the fact that I think people underestimate just how much the books were screwed. They didn't have any way to get anything else done.
Or they were just choosing to be oblivious to the obvious.
Yeah, and it's not about like whether or not Jody would spend. I'm not talking about that part of it. I'm talking about functional moves. They didn't have contracts that made sense. They didn't have the capacity to do anything else beyond what they had done to make functional change without trading one of CJ or Nurk.
Right.
And that was kind of where they were. Draft night craziness I have in here is kind of the next deal. And this was kind of a situation of what do you expect kind of the timeline to be as far as how things are going to go. And I got like 8 different versions of this. And this is one from Craig Onspach at Spock09. When do you expect the earliest we will hear if we trade the 7th pick draft night or earlier? There was another one like, what do you expect for as far as the timing goes? I would expect at this point, unless there is a deal that absolutely blows Portland out of the water, that the clock will start on their pick before they trade it. Because that pick is never more valuable than it is when the clock is active. Because everybody knows who is available at that exact moment.
I think Joe, though, before the clock starts, Joe will have a pretty good idea, though, of which teams are even remotely
they've got deals that are lined up for if X, Y kind of scenarios.
There's probably a 60-second clock where they get to the 1-minute mark of their pick, and they're like, okay, there's no deals. We have to take the pick. We're taking the best player that we think is the best player in this draft at this spot. And there you go. I would hope that in this order, because, again, I largely agree with what you're saying. Draft night, I think, is when we find out everything. Sacramento seems to be the only real one that legitimately on a national level has been floated out there as they're looking. I know the rumor mill stuff with Portland's there, but Woj isn't going on the NBA Finals broadcast openly saying Portland's trading that pick.
Shop. He's out there at QVC right now with Sacramento.
Man, Sacramento they're all kinds of desperate. I think it's draft night. I think the order is make big trade, whether John or 16, OG, if that's even available. And then I think the second part of that is trade up. At least I'd hope. Can you move up and entice a Sacramento with the 7th pick and, I don't know, a Nas in the 2025 Buck pick? I don't know. Can you? Should you? I don't know. But can you make that move where you get up and maybe sneakily walk out of there with a Paolo or a Jabari? And then the third is you draft the best player that you think is the best player.
I'm there with you. I think it's gonna be basically on the clock kind of a situation. Now, here's the other thing. You and I have said this for months now. Because of the free agent class and because of how close it is to free agency this year, I don't believe, or I believe that this is going to be one of the busiest draft nights we've ever seen. Like, there's going to be trades on trades on trades on trades. Because the way teams are going to get better this offseason is by trading, not through free agency. And the best night to do that is on draft night because you want to know what you have going into free agency.
Yep.
So this is the night to make it happen if you're going to make moves. That isn't to say that there won't be trades further down the line, but there's going to be some sign-in trades, I firmly believe, through free agency. But the big moves, I think, are going to happen for the most part on draft night, and you're going to see draft picks move. You're going to see players move, players for future picks, players for picks right now. OKC somehow accumulating even more picks. Somehow they'll find a way to come into a draft with 300 picks, and they'll leave with 400. I think those are the places or the type of things you're going to end up seeing come draft night. I thought this was fun because I did a little bit of this last season. Scott at Scooter569811. Will you send cryptic tweets when you hear rumors this week, such as boom or hold on to your shorts? I have one cryptic tweet. Wee! That is it. And that is when I know something's done.
Upside down smiley face. Wee!
Yeah. That is when I know something's done.
I still get texts from Danny where we're talking about something, and we text the other day about a rumor that he had heard. And we were going back and forth on our thoughts on it. And then he just ended the conversation with upside down smiley face, which to me is all I hear is wee.
Yep. So I would definitely, I will, if I get anything confirmed, which I had confirmed on the Snell and Zeller stuff, I had confirmed on the CJ trade, all that kind of thing. Those are the things that I would confirm. But I'm not an NBA information broker or anything along those lines. But if I can have some fun, I will. That's kind of how I see it.
I'm one of those, I think you're the friend who doesn't know the good friends. And so you're hanging out with a group of them and they're talking about those other friends you don't hang out with, and you obtain some of that information.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep, pretty much. Marcus Aarons, at Marcus Aarons. I've seen a bunch of this version. How do you guys feel about drafting a guard like Sharp at 7 and trading Ant to upgrade the 3 or the 4? I love Ant. I'm starting to come around this idea. He says, I should have said a sign and trade since Ant is an RFA. I've seen a lot of this. Well, they should trade Anthony Simons. No, they shouldn't. They should not take their value player who has shown significant upside and trade him so that they can draft a young player. Unless they're getting a absolute monster yes. in return, it should not even be on the table.
If we're not talking about him being part of a package involving Joel Embiid, I'm not.
Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, but that's not happening.
Again, but that's what I'm saying.
Just got to the finals. That's not happening.
There's just no way you look at that, because as much as Ant is going to get paid, and he's going to get paid, he's not. Right. The whole point of moving on from CJ McCollum was that you got players that made sense, that fit into salary slots going forward. And if Ant comes out and does exactly what I think he's going to do, which is perform, and he performs at a level that is above his pay grade immediately, then he becomes very valuable. And then when the TV deal comes, he becomes holy crap valuable. Then you start looking at situations like the Golden State Warriors in 2016-17 when they had the massive cap spike and the ability to bring in Kevin Durant. Now the Blazers have Anthony Simons, 20.5 rebound, 5 assist guy at $20 million, which will be an absolute bargain on the probably $15 billion TV deal that hits that year. And the cap spikes astronomically, and the Blazers can fit a player in there that they wouldn't have otherwise because they didn't get things done. I've seen a lot of that going on Rep City Reddit. I've seen it on Blazers Edge. I've seen it on Twitter. Guys, listen, you know where I stand on Anthony. Like that's. But even if I take my emotions out of it and go, what makes sense? It has to be a guy that hits. Like it cannot be spin the cylinder and go play a little bit of roulette. Like it's just I mean, are you on the same kind of wagon here, or where do you stand?
No, I don't really have much to add. I think what you're saying is you are a Ant super fan, but like everything you're saying, that's the standpoint of the franchise, and I think that's abundantly clear. It's why they're willing to give him $18 to $22 million a year to say, we're not really interested in selling off our young asset for another young asset. So unless you're including, again, I'm just spitballing with names. Like unless you're getting Joel Embiid all-star type talent back, like all NBA guys, I don't think Cronin and this organization are going to entertain that thought at all.
From Daniel at Priest Lake Dan, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being meh and 10 being holy crap on a crap stick, WTF is this team thinking? How do you think this draft will go for the Blazers, Brandon?
Well, I've continued to maintain the position. Portland doesn't get nice things, so they draft 7th and they draft a wing of some point, of some caliber. And there's a couple second-round draft picks that we do a podcast. We go, oh, I'm kind of interested. If we take a look at the film, what does it tell us? Well, it tells us that he could bust, or
he could be the next Draymond Green.
He could be the next Draymond Green, Gary Trent again.
Oh, God.
I think that's kind of where I'm ultimately.
Put a number on it, 1 to 10.
Like 10 being they hit on what they want?
10 was, holy crap, what is this team thinking? And 1 is meh. So I think the sweet spot is like 5 or 6.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle of that.
Okay.
I'm not expecting fireworks. So please surprise the living hell out of me.
Okay. I think
Where are you at?
I think I'm there. I think I'm like a 7 or 8. I think it's gonna be spicy.
I hope to God you're right, man.
I mean, you and I have talked a million times offline about this. I genuinely believe that. Then again, I genuinely believe that they would do better in the lottery. So, my record recently on what I genuinely believe on things that I can't control, not great, Bob. Not great. I thought this is an interesting question, but I wanted to talk about this real quick. This is from Matthew at Reverend Romulus. Should I be more upset that the Blazers didn't try to hire Ime Udoka or that Chauncey didn't bring in Rasheed Wallace as an assistant?
That's a fun question. Right. I have no real interest in Rasheed Wallace as a coach. I know it's a fun thing to talk about. I didn't hear great things from his Memphis stint that lasted all of a calendar year.
Nor New York.
And look, I don't think Ime takes that kind of talent single-handedly to the finals, but I think he did exactly what he needed to do to handle the personality types to motivate him, and he did some good X's and O's things to the point where, I think it's fair to say the Ime over Chauncey thing, because one actually had a proven resume. The other one was the former GM's friend. He could end up being a good coach and the right guy, but we don't know after 1 year.
We were talking about this in January when they were in a tailspin because there was real talk about, did they hire the wrong coach?
I still think people have that opinion. I think that's a pretty big opinion in Portland.
No, I'm talking about Boston with Ime.
They
almost
right.
There was real talk of
people were talking about firing him on the All-Star break.
Yeah, they came in his first year.
Yeah,
like it was not good, folks. And I think it's a very similar situation to Chauncey because Chauncey and Ime, they kind of mirrored each other to start the season as far as both teams starting out poorly, throwing guys under the bus in press conferences, talking about quite a few things publicly that I don't think in the past were things that coaches really have done, regardless if they're former players or not. I think they had some growing pains on both sides, but one team got their shit together in Boston. The other one decided to pack theirs up. And I think that after a while, you got to see that, hey, no, Chauncey or Ime they figured this out. They've got some buy-in. I still think there's plenty of things they have to figure out. But looking at where they are now, I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to see that Chauncey could have the same kind of impact. And again, for those that are out there that don't know, I think coaching has an impact, but the impact that it has, I think, is exaggerated quite a bit. But do I think it is something that you could get more buy-in? Yes, I think you started to see it in Portland, even though they were getting their ass kicked. I think you started to see buy-in in a particular style being a little bit more. I don't want to keep using the word buy-in, but I think that's probably the best thing. A particular style that I think guys would be more akin to.
I think the tough thing with that, I mean, you could be right. I think the tough thing for me on that is we were watching guys literally fighting for their career lives. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to get buy-in from dudes who are aiming for a legitimate second contract versus if you have a John Collins who just came from a slightly disgruntled situation. Now he's in Portland. How delicate is it? You got Anthony Simons going from ball dominant to playing off the ball more.
A little bit more off, yeah. There's going to be some
more off, 100%. And I think that's the balancing of ego personality, whereas I know Chauncey, I think in those instances, is going to harken back to Larry Brown and Ty Lue. And I would go the other way where Ime, I think, is going to go back to Pop, who he played and coached with. And so to me, I think there's one of those guys. Larry's an all-timer, but Chauncey was a player, so it's different. Whereas Ime got to be an assistant and see it through the coach's eyes.
For what, 9 years?
For 9 years after playing for Pop. So we got the player side and the coaching side, whereas Chauncey just saw it through the player's eyes with Larry, and he got 6 months with Ty Lue. And I think that's a massive difference.
And spent some time with a bunch of coaches in the offseasons at ESPN.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that's right. As far as that stuff goes. I think it's going to be interesting, kind of see how that goes. But as far as the Blazers not doing it, if you want to blame somebody, blame Neil.
Well, but so we both agree, though, it's Ime over Chauncey versus the Rasheed part, just because we.
Oh, for sure. Listen, I love Sheed, but as far as the coaching side of stuff, I think he's mostly just I think Sheed's a positional coach guy.
Sure.
Wiseman has said a ton, and Jalen Duren has said a ton, like how much they value him, how much they value Sheed. But also, you look at Jalen Duren, you're not exactly blown away by his post game.
Well, not everybody's Rasheed Wallace.
Again, how good of a teacher is he when we're talking about like making a guy better versus how good is he as a teacher as far as getting guys to understand what it takes to be at the NBA level. So I don't know. That's the thing. So as far as that stuff goes, that's kind of ultimately where I end up. And I wanted to say this. I thought my watch/phone went off a little bit ago. The Blazers did announce they will have another workout tomorrow.
Oh, did we get the names?
Didn't get the names yet.
Okay.
But I wanted to address this because we did a little bit on the show last time. The Blazers did have kind of a quasi-workout or quasi-secret workout on Thursday where Colin Gillespie and somebody else showed up. I'm totally blanking on the name now. Jeez.
Oh, I'm blanking too.
That's okay. I've got it in my notes here. Give me 1 second. I can't even remember now.
That's
I'm sorry. Josh Minot from Memphis. Speaking of Memphis.
Might not play.
But there's those two and I believe 4 others. I believe there's 6 players that had a workout. But it was kind of interesting that they had so many guys in that they didn't have a non-secret workout for, which was kind of a weird spot to kind of be in. But the other side of this is, again, even this week, the Blazers are bringing more guys in for workouts. So they're still trying to do as much due diligence as it takes before they get up there.
Yeah.
I just found that to be interesting that they're still grabbing as much intel as they can, which they should. I'm glad to see this. Get as much intel as you can, bring as many guys in as you can. We're going to kind of wrap it up because you got to go to your other show.
I do, yes.
Yes. So
this is the danger zone right now.
Yeah, nope. Draft night. I am short-circuiting right now. Draft night, we will have the live draft party. I had a couple tweets in here. Hey, what do we need to know? I will post the link on the public side on YouTube as well as Twitter. The only thing you need to have is the ability to sign in and show that you have ESPN. So as long as you have ESPN
Plus, cable,
whatever your streaming solution is, cable package, whatever, ESPN Plus subscription. That's all you need to do is verify your TV service, and we will have the live watch party going in there. And that is open to everybody, whether you're a paid subscriber or not. And Scott Jones says, Danny, is your technology ready for the draft party? Yes, everything is being rebuilt. Everything is being rebuilt on Wednesday and tested to make sure that we're good to go.
God, that definitely doesn't sound dangerous at all. Everything's being tore down to the studs. We're starting the day before the draft, and we'll be okay 24 hours later.
It's going to take me probably about 4 or 5 hours to build it all back up, but everything will be built up from scratch, so I know that the stack is good. It's going to be interesting to see which way things go in the first couple picks. And honestly, I'm excited, man. And again, I hope all of you guys can be there. It'll be fun. My plan as of right now is we will do the draft party and probably go into the second round. But as things start to wind down, we will wrap up the show, and I'm going to haul ass from here to the practice facility.
You are going to go to the PF?
I'm going to wait and see what they do for the press conference. But if we do have the late evening press conference, which they usually do, I will try to get down there. The Blazers will have their live draft show that they're doing from Moda, I believe. So I would imagine that they would probably end up doing the PF stuff a little bit later because as far as the setup, it goes in between both those. It's going to be interesting. That's all I'll say. But again, that'll be open for everybody. That'll be a part of Watch Playback. You can find us across everything. We may simul stream on YouTube and Watch Playback at the same time for those that can't get the authentication on ESPN, but some technical bugs I need to work out on that end. But other than that, I think we are good to go. You got anything else, Brandon?
No.
All right,
I think Thursday will be exciting.
Yeah, Thursday we will catch you guys then. Again, I will tweet out the links. I will tweet it from my account, from the Jack Ramsays account. I'll put it on IG. I'll put it on YouTube. Brandon will retweet it. You should not have any trouble finding it. It'll probably be up on Blazers Edge as well. Yeah. But we will see you guys then. Otherwise, take care. We will catch you guys later Thursday night. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Help us grow the show. If you enjoy us, if you hate us, whatever it is. We appreciate you. We'll see you all Thursday night. You can find us on social media at Nanny Marang, at Brandon Sprague, at Jack Ramsays. Email the show, jackramsays@gmail.com. Everybody have a wonderful Father's Day, Juneteenth, whatever it is you're celebrating. And we will catch you guys on Thursday night for the actual no BS NBA draft. And we'll have a much clearer picture from where we were on December 6th. When Neil Olshey was fired, to what the next iteration of the Portland Trailblazers is going to look like. So excited to see you all there. We will catch you then. Take care. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. Talk soon. Bye.